Hello everyone, Cindy Jordan here from Western North Carolina, and actually I just returned from I guess it was Central Tennessee, south of Nashville, visiting a good friend of mine. And during this time we did a little exercise called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, and perhaps you've heard of it. I find many people have heard of it, maybe even experienced it, and then forgotten about it. Excuse me. And that's happened to me oftentimes too, that I forget the tools that I have that help me take myself to the next level. It's also called tapping, for those of you who don't know. It was created and popularized and refined by Gary Craig, and I don't remember exactly who he got it from, someone he trained with, and then he refined it and became associated with an acupuncturist and learned more about the meridians and how it worked. And later I'll give you, or maybe in the blog, I'll give you a email address where you can go get a free download. It's about a 56-page PDF which explains it and also gives some stems that you can use and how it goes through the whole process, which I'm going to show you now. I'm demonstrating through video because sometimes it's easier to see this at work rather than just reading about it. Okay, so EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, as I described just a second ago, is based on what is known in the Eastern world and now in the Western world also as the meridian system, which is an energetic system that are lines of energy that run, or circuits of energy that run through our bodies and through our organs. And this is actually what the acupuncturists are actually treating. They're helping to unblock energy or to slow down energy that's flowing, which is what causes and manifests in our own physical and emotional symptoms. Just on a side story, my mother, I lost my father. My mother lost her husband about in April the 1st, actually, April Fool's Day, which I miss my dad very much, and I would get choked up thinking about him, but whew, I wasn't expecting that. But it was like him to be a trickster to leave on April the 1st, which was actually the day after his birthday as well, his 77th birthday, March the 31st. And numbers are very significant in his religious tradition, which is the Christian, Judeo-Christian tradition. And so 7-7, I'm sure, was like a big significant number, because 7 being a significant number in that tradition. So at any rate, and so my mother was having this lung stuff for the last month, really, and just maybe 6 to 8 weeks, just coughing. She'd been on antibiotics, she'd been taking medicine, she'd gone to the doctor, this, that, and the other, and I was really concerned about her, and it occurred to me to refer her to an acupuncturist, Chinese medicine acupuncturist. And she had never had acupuncture before, and I have, and it helped me with the sinuses and with my knee and different ailments. And so I asked her if she'd be willing to go, and she was, and she went, and she got treated for that. And, you know, even then, I did not think about tapping. That just goes to show how often we forget about the tools that we have. But I do want to say that she has gone, she's had 2 treatments with acupuncture with Bridget Barkley in Hickory, North Carolina. I just want to share that. Give Bridget a big kudos for the work that she's been doing with my mother, because my mother she is feeling better. She's getting more energy. She's not coughing as much or as long or intense when she does cough, and that's with 2 sessions. She's got another session coming up. And Bridget also mentioned that when we are in grief, when we have lost someone, she had noticed it's very common for people to come in with lung issues, for survivors to come in with lung issues. And that reminded me of my Qigong training, which actually with the lungs also has to deal with grief. And so clogging in the lungs or issues with the lungs could be related to grief. And so found that very fascinating. But we're talking about tapping today. I want to give you a little more on the tapping. So with tapping, what we do is we find an issue that is tripping us up, and it can be actually very intensive issues. And I'll also put some links to some YouTube videos, or add some YouTube videos with this, so that you can see some people actually working through this. what I'm going to do is demonstrate to you what it is. So let me see if I can come up with an issue, okay? Even though I feel overwhelmed, okay? Sometimes I feel overwhelmed. I've got a new business going here. I have other business that I was already doing and being involved in that I'm continuing and growing in. And then I have my family, and I'm on the road a lot, and I'm learning a lot, and I have a dissertation to write. And so everything together can be very overwhelming. And so what I will do is I will tap on being overwhelmed with all the responsibility that I feel, okay? And so what we will do, this is actually a broad perspective, and we want to get narrower and more narrow, but I won't actually do that right here. I'm just going to show you the process, okay? So the first part of the process, and let me do one more aside before I do that. When you get on YouTube and when you look at different trainings, different people do it differently, okay? And I think what I will do is I'll show you how I learned it, but Gary Craig, if you look at his information, he's probably the earliest who popularized it. He has, hold on just a second, I'll show you. Okay, so he has this whole series of trainings, and other people have trainings, but he was the first one. So there's EFT, Honors Library, and all these have like all these DVDs in it. Okay, so got lots of DVDs, and then emotional freedom techniques. Awesome videos, awesome training. This is who I learned from, but again, other people, Nick Ortner, I believe is his name, he's out there with a lot of stuff now, as are others. So here's the basics of it. So even though I feel overwhelmed with all the information, even though I feel information overload and overwhelmed, okay, that's what I'm going to be tapping on. Now what I'm going to do is what's called the setup. The setup, the first thing, actually pre-setup is the measuring scale. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how overwhelmed do I feel? Well, I can think about it, and I can feel about an 8. If I think about it, it's hard whenever I'm doing the video, but let's just say an 8 when I think about all the information, all there is to do. Okay, so I'll say, this is called the karate chop point, okay, right here, hi-ya, okay, so even though I feel information overload and overwhelmed, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. You can switch. Even though I feel information overload and overwhelmed, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I feel information overload and overwhelmed with information, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Now that part is called the setup. Another place where you can do the setup is along your collarbone here. If you go along here, you'll feel a tender spot somewhere. So there it is right there on either side. And again, you can say the same thing. Now Gary Craig, I see most people doing this. Gary Craig felt like this right here was the most effective. So you can do what you think and try it out yourself. Even though I feel overwhelmed with information overload, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I feel... So either way you do it, you say it 3 times, okay? And then the tapping part comes in. Now when they first began, they just tapped here, right inside the eyebrow here, corner of the eyebrow, right here along the edge of the eye, and then directly under the eye, directly under the nose, right, that little palette right there, right here in the chin, and the indention. Okay, and so I got to do it right here, more along right under that little knot right there, and then about a hand's width under the arm. So some people just do the whole hand right there to get it. And whenever you're tapping, it's around 5 to 10 times. I do about 7 times. Now they've added, from the basic training, they've added right up here at the crown of the head, right at the back, at the crown, with the 4 fingers. Right there. The reason being is because a lot of meridians cross that point, okay? So I've done even though I feel information overload, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I feel overwhelmed, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I feel information overload, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Okay? So then what I'm going to do, and this may sound a little unusual, but instead of saying something positive, I'm going to continue to identify what the issue is. Now I was at an 8, right? So then I would go information overload. Too much information. Information overload. Overwhelmed with so much information. Overwhelmed with diverse and multiplied information. Information overload. Information overload. Overwhelmed with so much information. Overwhelmed with information. Okay, typically they stop right there. I saw someone do this and I found it useful. So after I do this one up here, information overload. Overwhelmed. Peace. Or peace. And then a few breaths. And then we go back and we measure. So I think about the information, all the information I have coming to me. And then the question is, okay, how much overwhelmed do I feel now? Can I even make myself feel overwhelmed? Think about all the information, all the work, all the... Actually, I'm just speaking of information overload for the work, for my new business. And actually, I feel very confident right now. I don't feel overloaded by it. I feel, I know what I need to do. I know what information I need to tune into when and how to do that. But let's say that I did. So I would say I'm at a 0 right now. Let's say that I wasn't. Let's say I was at a 5. Okay? Then what I would do is I would go, even though I have some remaining sense of overload and being overwhelmed, I deeply and completely accept myself and love myself. Even though I experience some overload and some remaining sense of being overwhelmed with information, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I have some sense of overload remaining, some sense of overwhelmed with information remaining, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. So you can see what I did with the setup, switching back and forth. You can just stay on one hand. You can just do this up here. Okay, but I'm saying the remaining sense or remaining feelings of overload or whatever your feelings are. Okay, and then when I tap, I'll be saying remaining sense of overwhelmed, remaining feelings of being overwhelmed, remaining feelings of being overwhelmed, remaining sense of overwhelmed, remaining sense of too much information, remaining sense of being overwhelmed with information, overload, remaining sense of being overloaded with too much information, remaining sense of overload and overwhelmed with too much information, remaining overwhelmed, remaining sense of being overwhelmed, and peace. Okay, and you may have to do this 3 or 4 times. I was already at 0. I'm definitely at 0 now. So I was doing it with overwhelm. You can do this with, even though you're trying to quit smoking, let's say, even though I'm stressing for a cigarette, even though I'm dying for some nicotine, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I'm angry because I want some nicotine, even though I feel impatient because I want a cigarette, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And then you would go like this, feeling stressed and overwhelmed, stressed and overwhelmed, stressed, craving a cigarette, stressed and craving a cigarette. So you would do that and do remaining. Now I've worked with some people, just one person actually, maybe 2, on cigarettes, and it worked for a while. But see, there's underlying issues with wanting to smoke, and that's what they call aspects, and that gets a little bit further. But go ahead and try it on some things that, even though I'm afraid to take the next step, even though I'm confused, about what to do next, these types of things you can go ahead and start working on. Even though I'm anxious about this presentation, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. I'll add some stems at the bottom down here, and also see if I can find you a YouTube link or 2. And there's lots of them out there. I'm sure you know how to find them, but I'll make a couple easily accessible to you. And I hope that this video and this information has been helpful. You can use it anywhere in your personal life, in your professional life, in your personal development and growth life. So EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, also called tapping, brought out to you primarily initially through Gary Craig, and then Nick Ortner, and some others are out there right now, integrated in a lot of different ways for weight loss, for progress, for finding your love, this, that, and the other. Okay? Peace and prosperity to you until next time.